Today is August the 8th. Let's just set our intention, aspiration, um, by saying the Four Immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So today is our 1 year anniversary, actually. 1 year since we started this class. Some of you have been with us from the beginning. Some of you have been with us for a lot of it, or some are very new, but I just want to express my gratitude and thanks to you for participating in something that's been very meaningful to us, and would not have happened without your participation and support, and of course, especially to Nick Solidago, our producer, who this would not be possible without. Yeah, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing when we started, or who would show up, or if anyone would show up, or how long. I don't know. If I knew I'd be doing this every week for a year, I don't know if I would have stayed, if I would have shown up. But no, I'm very happy to be here. It's a good commitment, to sit with other people on a regular basis, discuss meditation and Dharma and Buddhism. It's good discipline for me and for I think a lot of us. So 1 year, that's something to be happy about. So we were I think it was last week or the week before, and there was a question about, someone mentioned something about mirror, and we were talking about, when you talk about Buddhism and the Four Noble Truths, and the first noble truth in life, there's suffering, and samsara is suffering, and the second, then when you talk about the cause of suffering, which really, I think, basically comes down to the ignorance and not knowing true nature of mind or reality, right? Which is non-duality, which is also supported on through physics and science in many ways. So how do we work that, What does that mean, and to how we interact with our world and with ourselves? And it's a very tall order, of course. But, Buddhism is not just about becoming calm, becoming nice, being, it's not just about that. I mean, those are kind of, I think, symptoms of Buddhism, and good symptoms or good results. But, the real purpose of the Dharma and the reason why the Buddha decided to teach was to wake us up from delusion, a misconception about ourselves and who we are, right? Going back to this thing about the mirror, so, because I thought about that a lot, who we are right now and what we experience in this moment and in this lifetime is a result of karma. Both from this life and from prior lifetimes, if you say. Our future life is dependent on the karma that we create now and the karma that has come before. And karma is not just what we do and it's, you know, the results of those actions. It's also know that what we have now is the result of prior karma. The actions we take now is the result of prior karma, and in this karmic chain that has been going on for a very long time. So if everything we perceive, and we perceive through our senses, you know, which is limited to the human form, right, to this human vessel, sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell, perception of mind, you know, how our mind perceives the world and interprets the world. That's just based on this human faculties. It is informs our reality, but it really is just one very subjective perspective on the totality of existence and reality, right? So accepting that our karma has brought us here, right? Accepting that everything we see and perceive through these senses, through this consciousness of senses, is ours in a way. Almost redefining self as not just us, right? Me versus them, me versus my brother, me versus my this adversary or thing, or, you know, redefining, because to try to relate to everything being one, the whole universe being one, is a very tall order. How do we implement that in, you know, in our day-to-day life? But one step in that direction may be to take that everything you perceive on a daily basis to be self in a way. So rather than just reify this body, these thoughts, this face, these limbs as self, you're expanding the sense of self into everything that you perceive through your senses. Now we have to use wisdom and intelligence if we're going to think from this place. We can't just, you know, intervene in strangers' lives when it's uncalled for, or just based on a certain ego, or certain, you know, what we think is right or what we think is wrong. But there is a certain amount of connection we can establish, and unity that goes just beyond the self. It's almost, it's like an exercise really, but it's really an exercise in awakening from this delusion and ignorance. So we start to perceive others as not just solely others. It's redefining the concept of self, you know. Obviously, we have responsibility to take care of our own health, our own mental well-being, our own situations. I mean, that's a given. That's part of being in this human form and in this plane of existence that we find ourselves now. But if we start to expand and let in the other elements of this world that we come in contact with on a daily basis through our sense faculties, this tight bubble of self can begin to loosen. We can create some space within that. We can start to let go of this delusion that we've cultivated and participated in for countless eons, right? We could talk about that further. I mean, it's just something that our discussion has prompted me, you know, to think about on a personal level, you know. You know, I was talking with a fellow student this morning about attachment, you know, to one's loved ones, and an expanding love to all beings. And we're not talking about being, you know, somebody who walks around I love you, brother. I love you, sister, to every person. There's a wisdom that has to know what's, how to respond in situations, and but really think, instead of what we're trying to do is go beyond attachment into love as a consciousness, as a vibration that we're kind of sending out and feeling. This is very, very difficult to do toward enemies, towards people who have harmed us. But we try to do that in a more, not in a personal way, not with the story of why I hate this person, why I'm angry at this person, what this person did for me, but just understanding that that person is in delusion as much as we are, and will suffer. This is really about Buddhism. This is not about meditation per se. And many of us come to meditation for different reasons, for anxiety, for want to be more present in the moment. And like I said, those things can be symptoms of Buddhism, of Buddhist practice, but not necessarily the goal. Now, meditation can be done in a completely secular fashion without any connection to any Buddhism or any kind of spiritual practice. But, many of you have come here to investigate Buddhism a bit, and the Dharma. Let us work on some meditation. Let's do the 9 purifying breaths. And imagine now the channels, which is the subtle body channels. And we use this visualization of the central channel as blue, the right channel as either white or red, depending on how you want to define yourself. These are ways for us to focus on it. It may not necessarily be how these channels of energy actually exist in the body, but they are there. So we start with the right hand. We do this Vajra fist, right finger to the opposite nostril. We're going to breathe in and go into the right channel. In my case, it's the white. And the white channel is associated with the negative side of emotion of anger, but the transformation of that into patience, compassion. Let's breathe in enlightened air, right, with compassion. Breathe out the negative qualities of anger, hatred. You're breathing down into the navel where the 3 channels meet. Breathe out. We'll go to the left channel, the red, that's associated with attachment, desire, jealousy, things like that, and transform also into generosity, loving kindness. We'll go into the central channel, the blue. When we breathe in, we'll breathe in through the 2 side channels, but they'll join at the bottom. We'll breathe out through the blue central channel. Associated with ignorance as a negative quality and the positive of wisdom and knowledge and understanding, oneness, non-duality, emptiness. And the last breath, instead of, we're going to breathe out through the nostrils, obviously, but we almost imagine it ejecting from the top of the head and merging with space. Mind merging with space. And take this into 11 minutes of meditation. Okay. Um, I'm gonna read some little teachings. And I talk about this a lot, but I encourage all of you who really have an interest in Buddhism to find an authentic teacher who's part of an established lineage. Why is that important? Because the lineage guarantees that the teachings have been passed down from realized master to realized master. It's not just someone who's read a lot of books and is, using their interpretation of things. And like I said, I'm a fellow student who's discussing things that they've been taught. But both to become a Buddhist and really to study Buddhism and to make progress is, the greatest thing is to take refuge with a Lama who's from a established lineage. Most of you know I practice the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Tibetan Buddhism has 4 branches, really. One of which is called the Kagyu, and Kagyu has several branches. One of which is Drikung Kagyu, which Garchen Rinpoche is part of that lineage. And there's not one lineage is better than the other. It's not a competitive thing, and I've had teachings with teachers from all the 4 lineages. But it just so happens my teacher is from this lineage, and that's how he has, how the teachings have been passed down to him and now to us. I post a lot of teaching. You can look at my hashtags when I post for this class. There's teachers that I mention. Do the research, or you can write to us on the email address, Nick, if you want to post that at some point. If you have questions about it, but don't just post how do I find don't just ask how do I find a teacher. I'm telling you, I post stuff on Instagram. I post teachings. Look through look through Google Buddhist teachers. See who's teaching where. You have the power of the internet at your hands. You have to do some of that work. See if there's a center in your area, or just see who's teaching and what's which teachers you connect to. When you start to explore and have questions about your exploration, we can help you, or steer you at least, or make suggestions. But there are resources. If you want to find a teacher, you will. Like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's some kind of universal law, not just in Buddhism. Okay, let's get to some actual teachings by people who really know what they're talking about. Okay. There's been some good ones lately. I like this a lot. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche always placed great emphasis on the importance of mingling our mind with the Dharma and unifying the practice in daily life. Our aim should be to blend our mind with the Dharma in meditation and to carry the quality of the meditation into all our actions. Dharma needs to become second nature. We are probably not integrating the practice into our lives if, after having practiced a lot, we remain just as angry as before, or even a little more. Another indication of a lack of integration is the absence of a sense of well-being. A genuine practitioner should at least become a good human being. That quote is by Shechen Rabjam Rinpoche, who I believe is the grandson of Dilgo Khyentse, but really his Dharma heir, and runs Shechen Monastery, which I think Dilgo Khyentse once did, which is in Kathmandu, Nepal. Let's read another. This one I really love. Imagine that you are very poor. You suddenly find yourself in a land where everything is studded with gems and gold and coins. You live there for many years, but one day must return home, making a perilous journey by sea with no possibility of ever returning to the jeweled land. Once home, you realize you hadn't thought to bring anything back with you, not a single jewel, not a speck of gold dust. How regretful you would be. In the same way, we move through the cycles of suffering lifetime after lifetime, lacking the merit, the virtue, and positive energy necessary to propel us out of samsara. Then, a few rare conditions come together to produce this precious human existence with its immense opportunity. If we die without using it to full advantage, we will have departed from the human realm empty-handed, having accomplished nothing. The first thought that turns the mind toward Dharma concerns the preciousness of our human birth and the importance of using it well. People sometimes wonder, why was I born? What is the purpose of my life? I have a feeling there's some great reason for my being here, but I don't know what it is. Some think their purpose is to play music or to write outstanding books, yet any music performed, anything written, is impermanent. We don't understand that our mind is the dreamer and our life experience the dream it has made. Because we have no idea that we are dreaming, we take life very seriously and often feel helpless when things don't go as we wish. Through spiritual practice, at the very least, we can make happy dreams and eventually we can actually wake up. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche. I have one more for today, I think. Let's see. Yes, the Karmapa. The main point is that if we are going to be real practitioners of the Dharma, then we need to become independent practitioners, people who actually know how to practice. By learning how to be quite direct and quite honest with ourselves, we might think we can always be sitting in front of our teacher or master and practice the Dharma. By continually receiving advice from him or her about what we should and should not do. But if we are always in need of advice, then someone who can give us advice is not always going to be there for us. Therefore, we have to learn how to pay attention to what's going on in our own minds and figure out what are faults and what are qualities and what is the way to distinguish between faults and good qualities. Instead of constantly looking to something that is outside of us, we have to develop the ability to pay attention in a mindful way and an insightful way to what is actually happening within us so that we can become capable, autonomous practitioners of the Dharma. That's the 17th Karmapa. Okay. Let's see if anyone has any questions or things they want to talk about. Norma Maldonado, who's a fellow actress. Some people say actor for men and women, some say actress, but Norma, as we've worked together. Happy anniversary. I appreciate your weekly dedication and generosity of knowledge and time. It's my 2-month anniversary. It has changed my perspective on life. I am grateful. I've heard, thank you, Norma, for sharing that. I've heard people say occasionally that they are meditating about a certain problem or subject or whatever the case may be. How is this done if the idea of meditation is to be free of thought? This seems contradictory. Well, there's many different types of meditation. What we practice here, we practice calm abiding, and we also practice a bit of Dzogchen meditation. Dzogchen meaning mind looking at mind, mind settling into itself, because the awareness of the fact that you're thinking, allowing the mind to release the thought and settle back into it. But there's also something called Vipassana meditation, which is really about cultivating wisdom. So say you want to meditate on emptiness, the idea of emptiness, shunyata, which is, everything being empty of inherent existence. I always relate to emptiness on a very physical level, on a scientific level as well. We're made up of whatever cells, which are made up of atoms, which are made up of electrons, which are made up of some kind of particles, which are made up of waves. And in essence, we're really not. There's nothing solid. There's nothing. Those waves don't are. First of all, there's minerals and there's elements. There's a finite number of elements in the universe that we know about, or that make up our existence on this planet. So there's nothing necessarily human about the essential nature of us on a physical way, right? To meditate on something like that, you can use. I haven't been doing this in class, but this is a separate thing. But there are meditation practices where you will let your mind settle into a concept like that, to try to gain some kind of understanding and eventually realization about those concepts, right? So it would be contradictory in calm abiding meditation, because then calm abiding meditation, you are, yes, indeed, it's about letting go of thoughts, letting them dissolve, watching them dissolve and watching them move. But in that type of meditation where you're really trying to gain some kind of understanding about that kind of topic, it's not mundane thought that you're using, really. It's almost kind of merging your mind with a teaching, with a truth, and trying to experience that in a way that you haven't. Some people may say, meditate, I'm going to meditate on this relationship I'm in, the good things and bad. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if that would be that necessarily is not how I would understand Vipassana meditation, or that's kind of something else. I find meditation calming, but I'm not sure how you go about integrating this into everyday life. Is this something that happens naturally after a lot of practice, or is something that you have to consciously work on? Kind of both. It takes a lot of practice and it starts to happen naturally after practice, but it is something that you have to consciously work on. So, just think in we're in a very, very simple, immediate way. What do we do here? We're sitting, we're becoming aware of our mind and how thoughts arise in the mind, and how we can apply a certain technique and the thought will dissipate. So we start to become aware how thoughts are not solid. The concepts that arise through thoughts are not solid or necessarily real. They're just, I always say they're almost like indigestion sometimes, right? You have a stomach thing. It's not like your stomach is bad. It's just something that has arisen, is going to go away, hopefully, unless it's, some kind of, fatal disease. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just like a mild upset stomach. But, okay, you walk outside your house. There's your neighbor who, I don't know, never picks up after his dog, and you resent him for that. So immediately you're conditioned to think bad things about this person. Now, everything about that person bothers you because he doesn't pick up after his dog. The way he looks at you, the way he, you kind of assume this whole thing about this person because they're inconsiderate. You think of them as inconsiderate, not being a good neighbor. Perfect opportunity to become aware of those thoughts and just let them go. Now, you could go up and say, it would be nice if you would pick up after your dog. Or maybe it's not someone you want to engage with, or maybe it's not someone you see every day, and it's not an opportunity to engage, or you don't feel like you should engage. But instead of being possessed by anger or hatred even, you can just let that go and just say, well, I can walk around that mess. I don't really have to, it's not really that, sometimes these resentments, these thoughts about people and things become such big obsessions, much bigger than they really are. I could step around this thing. You know what I mean? I'm walking down the sidewalk on Broadway and I'll step around it. I don't have to get into this whole story about this person is a jerk and I can't stand him and the way he dresses and the way he just doesn't look at me or say, hey, whatever. Letting the thoughts go. And I say this all the time because some of you are new. This does not mean become a doormat and a passive person. There's certain things and interactions that are necessary. And wisdom is often learning what is and what is not the scenarios that we want to engage in or how to engage in those things. So, it could be just something as simple as, you live with your partner, you live with your brother, sister, your mother, kids. We get into habitual reactions to things they do, things that annoy us. You wake up in the morning, they leave the dish and the thing, and you've told them 100, instead of just immediately, and fights and arguments can start from very little mundane, stupid things all the time. And often that becomes our go-to reaction or our go-to response. If you start to practice and work with your mind, you can get this gap where you're not immediately triggered by those, or you are triggered and you're able to kind of let that trigger settle or let it dissipate the way you've let the thought dissipate. Like if you're using that cloud imagery, the thought just arose like a cloud in the sky and it will dissolve back into the sky like a cloud. The same thing with that reaction, bad thought about somebody, habitual response, negative response. You can just let that go and have some presence. And by presence, I mean being in the moment, seeing that person as someone you love very dearly. Maybe. I don't know. Does that make sense, George? That's, no, that's not George. That's Kylie. Does that make sense? And it takes a lot of practice. Meditation is not easy. I mean, it's simple, right? But it's certainly not easy because our minds have been responding in our minds have been engaged in that chain or train of thought for our whole lives and lives before. Also recognize your very fortunate karma to be on a path to practice going beyond that. That's a big deal. I'm joining today's session from my hospital bed. I'm sorry to hear that, Neil. Through the open window, I could hear a mother explaining to her son's friend that her son has just been stabbed. At the same time, the general sounds of a working hospital can be heard. I was able to acknowledge all of this and go back to the breath while wishing the best for the mother and all people in her positions. A year ago, it wouldn't have been possible to have that awareness. That's a good example of what we were just talking about. You could practice Tonglen. You're on a subway train and you just see someone who's either obviously very agitated and very angry or very suffering. And if there's not something direct you can do, like offer some food or money or something, or if it's just a matter of somebody dangerous, maybe you have to stay away from, or their energy is very agitated, it's a little, instead of just surrendering to whatever thought or conception we have, there's tools like Tonglen, or making some kind of aspirations, or becoming aware of our surroundings in a different way. Like I was saying, everything you experience or people you come into contact with, that's evidence of a karmic connection, whether you like it or not. It just is. You would not see this person in front of you if you didn't have a karmic connection. All of us today here have a karmic connection. Doesn't mean it's a gigantic thing, but it is. Otherwise, we would not be together. Fauzi says, in Islam, we're required to do our prayers 5 times a day. In a way, it's like meditation, but we have to do several moves and recite the prayers for every move that we do during the prayer. My problem is I can't seem to concentrate to meditate, so I have to do meditation separately. Do you have any tips for me to concentrate better during sholat or any activity so that I can do meditation without having to do it traditionally or separately? I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm not familiar with this practice, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. I would recommend to do meditation separately for a bit, even if it's for 5 minutes a day. If you're already praying 5 times a day, your time may be short, and how much you can dedicate to kind of daily spiritual practice. And I understand that and accept that. I mean, I'm not going to challenge that at all. I mean, your practice is your practice, and I respect that. Why I'm saying to practice it separately is so you can really have a solid foundation in it, and then see if just by the fact of you being more familiar with it, that it somehow will infuse itself into your 5 times a day prayer practice. That's what I would say. I hope that makes sense. When you describe karma is such a big, giant thing. People have a lot of questions about it, as do I. When you describe karma, I finally accepted that my difficulties in life are the result of my own actions. No longer in my lifelong denial during meditation with that thought in mind, I can no longer deny my past actions. I started to weep while admitting, like in confession, what I have done instead of blaming others. Yes, it's your difficulties in life. There's also, it's a result of your own actions, but it's a result of actions maybe from other lifetimes. There's also something called collective karma. So all Americans alive today in 2021 are experiencing the presidency of Joseph Biden. That's a collective karma that we are all experiencing. Now, it's not really based on my own actions somehow, but in some ways it is, right? This gets very complicated. And in many ways, you can't separate karma from emptiness. And if the ultimate sense of ultimate reality and ultimate truth is non-duality and oneness, then what are your own actions? Yet, yes, we are very much responsible for our own actions and what we can and can't do, right? Like Guru Rinpoche said, my view is as vast as the sky, but my actions are as fine as a grain of sand. So you have this view of sky, of oneness, of complete limitless potentiality, empty of inherent existence, the unborn sphere phenomenon. That's vast view, interdependence, impermanence, non-duality. But your actions as a human being living at this time, your actions, you apply this awareness of, Guru Rinpoche says it. I'm not saying that, we all do that infallibly, because we don't, we're not enlightened. I'm not. Our actions are as fine as a grain of sand, because karma is so precise, and karma is just infallible, that every action is taken with precision, as much precision as possible. I saw a guy with Adolf Hitler shirt, and got so furious I actually got a headache. I really gave him a piece of my mind, fully knowing it would not help. I talked to someone who called me an idiot for picking a fight with a Nazi. I still think I did the right thing, but I feel like shit. Meditation helps for the moment, but I guess time will soothe this humiliation. Yes. Well, I think you feeling furious is natural. I think I would feel equally as furious seeing that, because obviously the shirt is not just meant for him, but it's meant to provoke others, which he did with you. And you don't look at your reaction to this situation as a failure. Your karma was to see this guy that today or whenever that happened, you know. Um, there are times in our life when we have to speak up, where we're not just going to say, bless this person, may they wake up. You know, there's times when you have to be courageous. You know, there are, you know, sometimes you have to protect yourself and others for, you know, and maybe this person needs to hear something from you, you know. Finding the wisdom, bodhisattva, you know, someone who's a bodhisattva, who's, you know, really a realized person and has realized the teachings, who's awakened, you know, their spontaneous actions are always directly in tune with Dharma, because they have liberated themselves, you know, from just the cage of the self, in a way. Until we're there, we take refuge in the Dharma, you know, in the teachings. And we try to tame our mind, and we make aspirations and we make prayers that we can have the wisdom, you know, to respond in accordance with the Dharma. Maybe next time you can respond and give him a piece of your mind, literally, without being furious, with being direct. You know, like when a boxer, boxers, right? Like Muhammad Ali, who was known as one of the greatest boxers. He was an expert at getting his opponent really angry, taunting him, and the way, you know, he would almost pretend he wasn't trying or whatever he could do, because he knows if he got that person angry, they had less control and less technique, that the rage would make their effectiveness less as a boxer, and would allow him, who's keeping calm and focused, to be able to take advantage of that. We always think like anger and rage is going to make you stronger, but it's actually, you know, if you see someone who's very powerful who doesn't react with anger when provoked, it's actually much scarier in a way, because that person's going to have much more control. Maybe next time, you know, you'll be able to be, and you also have to always weigh situations. Are you putting yourself or other people in danger? You're someone who's wearing a shirt like that, you know, obviously provoking people, wanting to provoke people, and obviously sending out a certain advocation of violence, hatred, murder, you know, can be dangerous. So Very tricky situations, you know. Take out the feel like shit. I still think I did the right thing, but I feel like shit. You feel like shit because you're making a judgment saying you responded wrong. But what's, you know, that's neither here nor there. You can think about how maybe you'd like to respond next time. But the judgment, you know, the kind of beating yourself up really serves absolutely no purpose and actually makes things harder, I think. What a great fortune to find ourselves able to enter this non-physical place, which you and Nick have taken care to manifest. Very grateful to share this space. Grateful to have you here. Okay. Congratulations to all. For making it to 1 year. I hope we can continue. And let's dedicate the merit from today's session for the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the omniscient state of enlightenment, conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. We begin our 2nd year next week. Thank you, Nick Solidio. Thank you all for being here.